What up, unicorns? Eric Abram here, and welcome to another video. In today's video, I'm gonna be doing something a little different, something kind of a touchy subject that most people don't like to talk about. No, it's not politics. No, it's not religion. It's money and it's salary. Basically, I'm going to be walking you guys through my salary in the incremental steps, not the incremental steps, but the incremental increases that occurred when I went from graphic designer all the way up to lead UX designer. I'm going to be walking you through the path when I started as a senior graphic designer, a UI designer, a senior UX designer, a UX designer, a senior UX designer, and then the 2 lead roles that I got after that. So I don't even know if I should be doing this, but I want to just put it out there and just be transparent on how much you could potentially make. I was probably underpaid if I'm trying to think about it. But anyways, these increments or these salaries really, it was good for me. It might not be good for you, it might not be good for somebody else, but for me, these were the things that I thought I was doing correctly until I went onto the market and I realized, oh, I can make a lot more money doing the exact same thing. So let's get into this real quick. So I put together a graph for you guys so we can kind of see, the roles and then the salaries as I went along from like left to right. And so I mocked this up in Figma, so it should be pretty easy to walk you guys through this. But when I started out as a graphic designer, I was making around $60,000. And to me, that felt like the most money I've ever made. Actually, it was the most money I've ever made in my life. And I was a graphic designer for like 9 or 10 years. And so I went from, making like $30,000 in the beginning to making 60 over 9 years. I was just like, yo, that's pretty good for me. This is the most money I've ever made, and it can only go up from there, right? Wrong. Nobody's paying graphic designers $200,000 a year to make graphics. Why would they? And so this is when I was making my career transition. I was taking the boot camp at Springboard. I was making the different life choices and changes. And so that's when I transitioned to being a UI designer. And as a UI designer, I increased my salary by like $5,000. And to my mind, I was like, this is amazing. I've just increased my salary by $5,000 per year. I feel pretty good about this. I was just like, my mind was just like, oh, this is a lot of money. In hindsight, it really wasn't a lot of money. But I didn't know any better. I came from being a graphic designer to a UI designer. I didn't know how much UI designers made. I just said like, hey, $5,000 increase, that's what I want. And I just said $65,000. And they said, okay. I'm just like, I probably should have maybe thought of a bigger number. But because they said yes way too fast. But anyway, this is my salary when I started out as a UI designer working. So then from there, I went from UI designer to a UX designer. And when I made that transition, I went from $65,000 to $90,000. So so basically this increase is showing you from the time I was a graphic designer, I've increased my salary by $30,000 from going from graphic designer to UX designer. And I was just like, yo, this is amazing. Like, this is a lot of money. Like I said before, I've never made this much money. I'm like, I'm so grateful. I'm killing it at work. I'm so happy. And not knowing like, yo, this is a low number, right? Like I hear about a lot of people's other salaries, they're way higher than this. But at the same time, I was living in Georgia, so I'm not really sure if that had anything to do with it. It probably did. But this is the amount of money that I made as a UX designer transitioning from a UI designer. And then I went from UX designer to senior UX designer, and I went from 90 to 120. So therefore, I increased my salary by $60,000 from when I was a graphic designer all the way up to a senior UX designer. And I was just like, yo, I finally crossed the the 6-figure mark. I finally crossed over. I'm making 120. I'm super happy. My wife and I, we can now go and get certain things and go on certain trips and obtain things that we've always wanted to get. So this was amazing to me. And this is pretty cool because I've never thought that I would ever make this much money in my whole life. My parents have never made this much money. So I never actually seen people make this much money. A funny story was I told my friend back who lives in Georgia how much money I made with this 120 salary. He was like, yo, I didn't know that you could even make that money legally. I was like, what? You didn't know you could make this money legally? Like, yes, you could legally make $120,000 a year, bruh. Stop thinking hood. Stop thinking hood. Like, yes, you could do this. But anyways, so I went from senior designer to my first lead UX design role. And when I made that transition, I went from $120,000 to $150,000. And then in my mind, I'm like, I think I made it. I think I crossed the threshold that I've never seen any of like my family members have crossed. I don't know. They might have, but in my mind, this is the most amount of money I've ever seen anybody that I knew make in a year. And I was the guy. And I was just so elated. I was like, oh my God, I feel like I've made it. I feel like I've made it. But money is not everything, right? I was really chasing titles at the point. I was like, I wanted the lead title, and the money came with it. That was great. But when I seen I could make $150,000, I was like, this is amazing. I like being a lead designer now. Like, you know what I'm saying? So I went from senior graphic designer making 60 to my first lead UX role making 150. And that's an increase of $90,000. Yeah, I increased my salary by $90,000 from a graphic designer to my first lead UX role. And then I went out and I got another lead UX role, and that brought me up to the most money I've ever made in my career. I just want to let you guys know, I do not make this much money now. I did. I took a pay cut because it's for reasons I won't talk about. But anyways, I went from making the most money I've ever made to making less than that currently. So this is the most money I've ever made. I do not make this currently, but I did achieve this. This video is brought to you by Springboard. Hey guys, if you have ever been wanting to make the transition from being graphic designer, teacher, truck driver, whatever, to being a UX designer, you gotta try Springboard. You just have to try it. I did Springboard. That's how I got my start. That's how I made the transition. That's how I got things done. That's how I got my first job. I took the projects that I did in Springboard, put it on my portfolio, submitted that, and then I got a job interview. I'm not saying it's easy like that, but that's kind of how it happened for me. So if you guys are looking to make a career change and you want to switch over to user experience, data analytics, whatever the heck you want to do, Springboard has it for you. Springboard is pretty cool. They offer a mentor one-on-one, so you get to meet with a mentor once a week, which is pretty cool. I'm also a mentor at Springboard, so if you sign up, you might get me. Who knows? Also, they offer a job guarantee, which is pretty cool, meaning that if you don't get a job, 6 months after you get your certification or after you graduate, they will give your tuition back. They will give all that back, which is pretty cool. Also, because you are an Ugly Unicorns listener, you will get $1,000 off your course when you use my coupon code at checkout. It is Ugly Unicorns SB1000. That is UGLYUNICORNSSB1000. Yes, because you are Ugly Unicorns listener, you get $1,000 off your course. So go be a UX unicorn, go be an Ugly Unicorn, and sign up with Springboard. I'll see you there. And I went from $150,000 to $165,000. Now, Some of you guys over in like New York, or I don't know, maybe Dallas, or maybe even like somewhere in, you know, San Francisco or California, you're probably looking at this like, this is nothing. Like, this amount of money, I would be homeless with this amount of money. But for me, like, dude, I'm balling. I live in freaking Georgia. Like, I'm making 165,000. I think at this point, was I living in Georgia or was I living in Florida? No, I was living in Florida at this point. I was making $165,000 living in Florida, no state taxes. Bruh, we was balling. We was balling. That's not even including my wife's salary. We're not even gonna mention hers. It's not about her. But we was balling, son. I was like, yo, we're making 165, but that 165, it came with some things. It came with some stress. It came with some heartache. It came with some depression. Yes, it was this role that I got for 165, it was not a great one. But I achieved this, and I'm very happy that I was able to actually, you know, experience that and be able to achieve this. Now that I realize money's not everything, because with money, there's always some sort of string attached to it. There's always something to it. So this let me know, like, hey, I was chasing titles. Don't do that. Then I was also chasing the money. Don't do that. And that's when I realized this money's not worth it if I'm going to be unhappy. I would rather make less money and be happy than make 165 and be miserable. So from the time I went from senior graphic designer all the way up to my second lead UX designer role, I increased my salary of $105,000 over the course of 4 years. 4 years it took me to achieve this particular number here. Remember when I said that when I went from, when I was working from as a graphic designer making 30,000 to 60, that took 9 years. And I just, you know, increased and more and doubled and maybe even more and tripled my salary. This was making this in 4 years, making that, you know, making that transition from being graphic designer to lead UX designer. So in 4 years, I achieved this $105,000, but as a graphic designer, it took me 9 years to make 30. So I just want to end the video with that. Hope you guys enjoyed it. You know, this wasn't an easy topic to talk about, because, you know, there's this whole stigma around like, don't talk about your salary or how much you make or blah, blah, blah. But being a person who is a Black designer, you know, it's kind of hard to know what salaries are achievable and what to even ask for. In my mind, whenever I made these increases, I would just like, I want this, or I want that. I was just making up a number. I'm not even joking. I was like, maybe I did some research on some of these salaries, but in the beginning, dude, I was just making up numbers. I'm like, well, shoot, I want this, and I got it. I was like, oh, I should ask for more. I don't know, but I was always afraid that whenever I went to these like job interviews and met with these, you know, recruiters from these companies or whatever these places are, I was always so worried that if I said a number that was too big, I would not get the job. I was so concerned about that. And then I would go into the job, if I did get it, and I would just bust my ass and work super, super duper hard, and not knowing I was underpaid. Because in my mind, I'm like, well, if I ask for this much, I really want this job. But if I ask for this much, they're going to say no. But at the same time, I don't want to like undercut myself. But at the end of the day, you end up undercutting yourself. You end up lowballing yourself because you're so afraid that you're not going to achieve or get this particular job. Yo, it sucks. I've been there. I've done that. And I just want to let you guys know, like, yo, there's a better way of doing it. Go out and research these salaries. Like, talk to people. Have people just explain to you, like, yo, you know, hypothetically, if you were to make blah, 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 how much would that be? And just ask them maybe in that way if they're not really comfortable giving you like real deal numbers like I just showed you here. But anyways, that's been the video, guys. I really appreciate the love and support. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And please share this video with all your designer friends of all ages, of all creeds, races, genders, whatever the crap. Share with everyone so they can kind of see like, hey, this is what Eric Abram has went through as far as being a graphic designer all the way up to lead UX designer. And here's his salary increases incrementally happening over the years. And so I just want to say that I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. And like I always say, don't just be a unicorn, be an ugly unicorn.